Hello and welcome back to Football Kentron, the only English language podcast dedicated to Armenian football. Adam here, along with Ottoman and Chadens. We are doing a quick take recording right after Armenia just fell 2-0 away to Scotland in Hampden Park in Glasgow. We are going to be wrapping up the first two matches of the UEFA Nations League and looking forward to the matches that are still ahead of us. Gentlemen, Armenia just got off the back of a disappointing performance and loss away to Scotland in what is arguably our most difficult away match of this Nations League campaign, already out of the way. Two first half goals from the home side, from Ralston and McKenna, both headers at the far post, one coming from a corner and the other just coming from a cross. We spoke in our preview of this match about how Scotland is going to look to cross the ball. And boy, did they cross it.
Yeah, there's not much to add. I mean, other than the usual frustration, but I think we need to keep our heads together. I mean, it wasn't as bad and it wasn't as good. You basically summed everything up. I'm just glad that we got the hardest game, arguably, out of the way.
Chadens, your boy, Liverpool wingback and captain of Scotland, what was his name again? Andy Robertson, I'm just joking. Champions League finalist and winner, right? He had a hell of a game on the left side. I think his leg was probably tired from crossing the ball. How do you assess Scotland's performance overall against us?
Robertson was typical Robertson, running down the wing all the time, crossing it. The crosses were expected. As we mentioned in the last episode, they crossed a lot of it. Very close attempts. They had many very close attempts. It's what they wanted and they got it. On their end, they can check. They can mark a tick on all the checklists that they have.
Yeah, it was a professional display. It was on a professional display.
On their end, of course, it was.
I think Scotland had about 29 crosses in that game.
They done their homework all right.
Absolutely, and they had about 45 long balls, of which 77%, 34 were accurate. So clearly their game plan was, if you're going to bunch up in the middle, we're just going to take the ball over the top. And it worked like a charm against us, as we said it would, because if there's one type of pass Armenia has historically been terrible at dealing with, it's these over-the-top balls. And you know, with our luck, we've drawn against two teams in the same part of the continent that love a cross of the ball. This time around, it was a very, very good Scotland team, and I think it's important for us to look at this as a tale of two halves. I mean, this Armenia team, which was set up almost identically as to the game against Ireland, I think the only change that was actually made was Vahan Bichakyan was dropped to the bench and Sargis Adamian had started. Not that that made a difference, because neither him or Tigran Barsegyan got any meaningful touches in the first half of this match. Armen, what are your thoughts on that first half, on our performances?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it was a game of two halves. Of course, way better. We played way better on the second half, and that first half was awful. I mean, you mentioned the amount of crosses and the amount of long balls to the long post or to the far post and stuff, and the accuracy of them. But I'm sure that most of them must have come during the first half. Man, that was an awful first half. I'm glad that they even had a third goal ruled off on offside. That would have been way different. I mean, that could have been, if the goal wasn't ruled out and it went 3-0, the halftime. It could have well triggered the PTSD from the Norway game. And I think we're seeing a clear tendency here that CAP's philosophy lately has been each game has 90 minutes. We play 90-minute long games. We must hold off the game as much as possible during the first half, get as well as possible as we possibly can to the second half, and finish off strong no matter how the result is. If we're close, we can win it in the second half. If we're not close, we can get closer in the second half. So the tendency is there. Wrong calls have been made, but I'm not as pessimistic as many people are after any defeat.
Yeah, I think the pessimism stems from the fact that we have some players that it just feels like they're being wasted with this style of play. I think the two notable ones, and I think that was especially obvious in today's game, was Sargis Adamian. The guy was literally yelled at Kamo, I think right before halftime, and the mics picked it up. Because he was screaming at Kamo because he was so frustrated with how this guy couldn't get into the right position or make the right pass, and you got to feel for the guy because that's not quality you want to be surrounded by, and I think also playing into that is Spertsyan, of course, another player we've talked about a lot leading up to this
for over
these games. And for over a year, that the difference maker this kid can be, but you're not in this system getting the best out of him, and two players who are arguably our best and most talented attackers are not being utilized properly in the system. Maybe it's time to rethink your system.
Yeah, and maybe it's time to consider having more than one system. I mean, I don't know, man. The system did work last time out against Ireland, but on some other games like today, granted, of course, rotation and fitness came into play, and we lost focus for today. But still, the system wasn't there. The system wasn't there against Norway. The system wasn't there last semester during the group stage when we played competitive games against Germany, Macedonia, Liechtenstein, Iceland. All those games were played on a bad system, on the wrong system as well. Maybe it's time to have more than one system, even if that means not being as used to one system as you should be. You have to have more than one alternative. You have to make the most of Eduard Spertsyan. Come on.
Yeah, and there were changes. Maybe not necessarily in the shape, but there were tactical adjustments that were very notable in the second half. Of course, Scotland scored both of their goals in the first half, and Armenia had a much brighter second half. There was a triple substitution to start off the second half where Vahan Bichakcan, Webemar Angulo, and Daron Voskanyan were all brought in place of Artak Grigoryan, Kamo Hovanesyan, and Sargis Adamian. There were some
here's something
impacts.
Important. Yeah, here's something important I want to add up to what you're just saying, is something you highlight from time to time, Adam, is how this, say for instance, this triple change over halftime meant you brought in maybe not as good as quality in terms of personnel for the ones you were benching or replacing, but the system changed and we played better in the second half, arguably, or not arguably, but visibly, with not as good personnel as the first half. And the reason for that is the change in tactics.
Yeah, it seemed that the approach kind of became the management team noticed that on the left side, the Scottish left side, there seemed to be a lot of holes because of how far up the pitch Andy Robertson was, and
the approach must have turned into let's do our thing.
Yeah,
right.
And it was a much better
let's stop letting them do theirs.
Chadens, this is something that you were touching upon in our discussion before the match. Before the recording. Exactly how was Vahan Bichakyan able to get into these spaces and create these chances that he did in the second half?
He could easily do it. We saw it several times. He could hold the ball, try to go forward. If I'm not wrong from my observations, he was maybe the first or the second player to be best at keeping the ball and laying it off to the next players. Sarkis Adamyan was doing that in the first half. In the second half, he was the one doing it, and he was doing it very well. There were one or two times it was given a foul against him, but he was very useful in that aspect. However, we still would like to note that he is for sure better used as a winger. But if he's used as a winger, you need someone in the middle.
Yeah, and you're right, because every single time he received the ball in the second half that ended up in a dangerous play, it was on the right wing. So it's a little annoying that this keeps happening. Instead of taking Sako off, why don't you keep Sako up, move him to the right, and take someone like Bayramyan off? That would make more sense. But I don't know. A lot of Cap's decision makings have been questionable. I think the next game against Ukraine, how we line up, is going to be very telling, because he only made one change in 2 games. You have Mikoyan, who played 180 minutes. You have Haroyan, who's played 180 minutes. Arman Hovhannisyan, who's played, I don't know, he got injured, so maybe 150 minutes. Hambar Zumian played 180.
Really,
so
they're still going to play.
You have options on the bench. We have Girard Margarian, who can easily come in for Arman Hovhannisyan. We have Jordi Ararat, who can easily come in for Hambar Zumian. We have Stiopa Mukherchan, who is probably likely going to come in instead of Mikoyan. I think the reason
in these games, I don't think that would have been ideal, because firstly, it's the most difficult game, like you said. It's arguably the most difficult game of this campaign. First, and second is that the first game they were gonna play again because you want to start off well, and that was our first game.
That's what I was gonna get into.
So it's logical that they wouldn't play this game as well. Now the next game, it depends. We're gonna be away. We're not gonna be in Ukraine, but we're still gonna be in an away game. What he does is up to him, obviously, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I was gonna get into this because I agree. I mean, maybe I don't agree, but I do see the logic. I mean, the formula for this game and for playing mostly the same lineup as 3 days ago or 4 days ago, Saturday, against Ireland, was clearly prioritizing form over fitness, and you want players that are confident, at least if you're in Cap's head, right? The logic was that one. And those players that played today against Scotland come off a great game against Ireland on Saturday. But, of course, they lost focus. Speaking of Ireland, I think that before going into rotation versus Ukraine and stuff, we need to not get ahead of ourselves and analyze a little bit the game that we did win.
Yeah, the first one.
Agreed. So, shifting our focus over to Armenia versus the Republic of Ireland, which took place a few days ago in Yerevan.
It was a tactical masterclass. Come on.
It was a tactical masterclass by Joaquin Caparros, who had an identical approach that he did to the Scotland game, except for the fact that this actually worked. And I think it's very telling that in his post-match press conference, Joaquin Caparros, he did a really short one after the loss against Scotland. He was asked about by a Scottish journalist about the Irish team and the Scottish team. He says, "What do you make of them after having played both sides?" And he said they both play very similar physical styles of play.
Yeah.
But I agree to a certain extent. because the major difference between these two sides was Ireland kept on trying to attack down the middle and kept on trying to break through our line on the ground while Scotland smartened up and kept the ball in the air. But nevertheless, Armenia held their ground amazingly well. The entire team did a fantastic effort, no lapses in concentration. I think they had a couple chances at most in Ireland, and we had created some chances, first and foremost in that second half being Tigran Barsegyan's goal, which was later ruled offsides on Hambarzumian, who was a little ahead of his man before the pass. But that was just a warning shot that was fired when ultimately Eduard Spertsyan, who picked up the ball in midfield and just drove straight to the top of the box with, little to no resistance from the Irish players, and scored an absolutely beautiful goal that kissed off the post right past Kelleher, who is the deputy to Alisson at Liverpool. It was a great game. It was a great display. And it was also a great instance of how when Joaquin Caparrós does his homework correctly, things go exactly the way that he has planned. But, and I'm going to pitch this to you, Armen, we were not as sharp as we would have hoped to have been, especially in the first half of this game against Ireland. And we saw echoes of this in the first half against Scotland.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what happens when you play certain players that are really not good enough to be national team players. But for some reason, they keep getting called up. And I think the tactics were okay. And the team was there. And even for the not as good players, they did have a relatively good game against Ireland. There's always things that need to change, but even with this team, even with this squad, and which we may not fully agree with with the call-ups, with some call-ups at least, even with that, I think we can on a good day beat any team that's in our group. Of course, we're still the minnows, but things did go well against Ireland. Yes, the first half was not good, or at least we had some lapses of like losing focus. But for the most part, we did okay. Of course, that same loss of focus against Scotland cost us dearly. I said in the live we did it right before the Scotland game that one mistake was enough. Well, we had two, if not three. So again, a lot to work on, but I think the Ireland game was a masterclass.
Chadens, seeing as though Joaquin Caparrós said that these two teams are being Scotland and Ireland played very similarly, what do you assess was the difference, in your opinion, as to why we were successful against Ireland, but failed to pick up any traction against Scotland?
From my observations, Scotland were faster, more confident. They do have more quality players. I'm not trying to say that they're a better team. It's just that they have more players of huge, well-known quality. These were the key differences between them two that posed a huge threat on Armenia.
Yeah, I think they were, as that song says, harder, better, faster, stronger than Ireland. I think the physicality, we associate both Ireland and Scotland similarly, because they are very close to each other, England and Wales as well, to be physical teams, right? Because this is the leagues that they play in are very physical leagues, except Scotland was a step above physicality-wise. They were, especially on that second goal. I mean, I think it was Arman Hovhannisyan looked like a little kid compared. So it was a little bit frustrating.
Well, yeah, there's that too. And along with that was that I don't know if the players expected it, if they did not expected it, but that causes a huge problem as well. Like you said, Arman was kind of not confused in some cases, in some instances, which is normal, really. I mean, nothing's going to be perfect.
So, boys,
I think the 2-0 is okay. I mean, for goal difference.
We were never really anticipating to win this game. I think we just wanted to be competitive, hoping for a draw. I think was.
And we were. Come on, I mean, after only because the third goal was offside, but we did wind up being competitive for most of the game, especially the second half.
Yeah, and I think the second half, of course, against Scotland was a much better display. It was very similar to the display against the Republic of Ireland. As we said, there were some chances that were fashioned. Just the shots at the end of them just weren't that strong, and it kind of led us to it just didn't seem like it was our night, and that's fine. We don't have any time to mope. We don't have any time to think about it because in a few days' time, we're going to be playing against the Ukraine on Saturday. So it's going to be a quick turnaround, and the players are going to, have to have short-term memory of this game and really just try their best to recover in the next couple of days and, prepare themselves mentally as good as possible to prepare for this game, because it's going to be really important for us to get something out of it. Considering it's the away leg, it would bode us well, I would think. So final thoughts, boys, before we wrap up this quick take episode. We are currently sitting on 3 points. We are third in the table. Scotland is first in the table with a +2 goal difference. Ukraine is second with a +1 goal difference after they had edged out the Republic of Ireland 1-0. Armenia sit third with 3 points and a -1 goal difference because of this 2-0 defeat. And Ireland are bottom of the table on 0 points and a -2 goal difference. Still on 3 points, like everyone else, except we've already played 2 games.
Yeah,
Scotland
that's
and Ukraine have only played 1. That's it. That's all we have for today. Any closing thoughts, boys?
We shall see on Saturday.
Yes, we shall see Saturday.
I expect to see some rotation. I mean, we need to have some rotation. Against Ukraine is going to be arguably one of the toughest games because Ukraine did. I mean, not to underestimate Ireland or anything, but Ukraine literally played 11 second-string players. So they're going to be playing full force against us in this Saturday. And I don't know how to address this. You have a front three that should be in perfect fitness, which is Vahan Bechakchian, Sarkis Adamian, and Edgar Babayan, which is super dangerous against any defense. And in the middle, we need to see some changes because the really tired legs are down the middle. Horen Bayramian and Dartak Krikoyan especially, they need to be changed. And I would I would give the first cap to Rudik Mkhitaryan. I want to see how he fares against some of the best attackers in the world in Yarmolenko, Zinchenko, Malinovsky. It would be interesting. And again, wholesale different changes in defense. I think it's going to be a game for scouts. And then against Scotland next Tuesday, we need to play full force with the mix of the fittest ones, the players that are the fittest. I don't know, bring back Tigran Barsekyan, bring back Eduard Spertsyan, you know, mix the ones that are the fittest and finish off strong in Yerevan next Tuesday against Scotland. That's the idea. Hopefully Cap sees it.
Hopefully. So just to reiterate, Saturday, June 11th, we play away to the Ukraine, and that match is going to be in Poland, or as I like to call it, Vahan Bichakchan's house. And then we come back home to Yerevan on Tuesday, June 14th, to wrap up this national team fixture list at home to Scotland. That is going to be a little later kickoff time. All right, boys, thank you for joining. This was a great session. A little bit disappointing with the loss today, but you know what? 3 points out of 6 points in the first 2 games is as good as I think we could have expected. We need to be calm and relaxed and hopefully get a result away in Ukraine and then get another result at home to wrap up this national team camp. And I think, like we said, the goal is to stay in League B. So as long as we can do that, I think we're in good shape. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of Football Kentron. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you don't already, please follow us on our social media, Twitter, Instagram, all that jazz. We do live tweet stuff. We do occasionally do some spaces. We like to have those types of discussions before matches. We've been enjoying it. And that's it. Well, all right, guys. Bye for now. We'll see you after the matches. Peace.